Hello everyone, my name is Karina Kretz, and today I'll be giving you a demo of EngineRoom. So right after you log into EngineRoom, you'll come to the project home screen. You'll see here at the top, we're going to create a new project. So I'm going to click on that new project button. I'm going to write in demo. Once you get into your new project, you're going to get onto the workspace. So across the top here is the toolbar, and you'll see as you hover over each of these phase names, you will get a list of all of the tools available in EngineRoom. Right now we have this organized in the DMAIC format, but we actually have a couple of different menu types, including PDCA, PDSA, DCDOV, as well as a standard menu, which just groups the different tools by type. On the left side, we have a questions menu. So if you are using a phased roadmap, we do offer our critical questions as well as suggested tools to help you answer each of those critical questions. On the right side, we have a find tool search bar. So if you are looking for a particular tool, you can search for it over here in this section. Over here on the left is our data sources panel. So if you are working with statistical analysis tools and you need to use your data, you can either upload your data or copy and paste it using our new spreadsheet button. Over on the right side, we've got our studies panel. So anytime you create a new tool or a new study, those will appear over here on the right. Finally, up here on the top right, we have a couple of menus. So the first is our sharing menu, which allows you to share this project with another user. Our help options, which will take you to our help center. If I click on that, this is going to give you a couple of our getting started guides, as well as tutorials for each of the tools that we have in EngineRoom. This is also a place to contact us. So if you have a question or if you're experiencing an issue, you're able to reach out directly to my team from here. Finally, we have the user menu, and this has a couple of different options, including a guided mode, which will make it easier for you to add data more quickly, or it'll give you step-by-step instructions for how to use each of the tools. Our tours, which are going to give you a walkthrough of some of the introductory steps for using EngineRoom. Our menu button, which will allow you to switch that toolbar menu at the top. A language option, which will show you all of the different languages that EngineRoom is available in. A decimal separator symbol. So for our international clients, we have the ability to set a comma as a decimal separator versus a period, as well as some additional information about your license and the ability to log out. In addition to our sharing menus at the top, in our bottom right, we have Hexi, which is our AI chat assistant in EngineRoom. Hexi is great for answering questions about statistics, including what certain inputs and outputs mean within your studies, as well as which tools are useful to you and other sorts of tasks for completing process improvement projects. There are four main types of tools in EngineRoom. We have documentation tools, diagramming tools, statistical analysis, and modeling tools. We're going to go through an example of each of those now. The first one we're going to talk about is documentation tools. These are great for doing project management right here within EngineRoom. So for example, in the define phase, we have a financial return calculator, a Gantt chart, project charter, project prioritizer, and anything that has this sort of spreadsheet-like symbol over here on the left. Today, I'm going to just show you a RACI matrix. If I click on that, I'll pop up in a small window, and then when I click on launch, it'll open in a new tab. I can retitle my RACI matrix here. And this can be a good example for all of our documentation tools. They kind of look like a spreadsheet, but on the left, you're able to type in your information. Across the top, you might have cells that require information. Our documentation tools have several abilities like drop downs, as well as different ways of calculating equations and ranking different outputs as you are going through your documentation. So in this case, we've got a couple of drop downs that allow you to define the different parts of RACI. I'm going to close this one out. The second type of tool we have here in EngineRoom is our diagramming tools. So if I come to the Define menu, you can see I have an Affinity Diagram, a CTQC diagram, a Process Flowchart, SIPOC map, Value Stream map, basically any of these tools that have this flow icon here. For this demonstration, I am going to show off our Process Flowchart. Then I'll click Launch. I will rename this Process Flowchart, although you can leave it untitled if you'd like. And I'm going to click Create. Our diagramming tools are opening up in a new tab to give us the most space possible to build out our diagrams. The EngineRoom diagramming tools look very similar to some of the other diagram tools on the market, but this allows all of your tools to be housed in one place in EngineRoom. So over here on the left, we have our blocks. I can click and drag those onto the workspace to build out my process. So I will just add a couple of shapes here in order to move around the screen. I'm going to click and drag, and that'll allow me to add my start and stop here. I can use my scroll wheel to scroll in and out. So now with the diagram set up like this, you have the ability to add text into each of these shapes. So I'm going to put step 1, step 2, and step 3. One feature I like to show off about our diagramming tools is if you do have your items out of alignment, you can hold Shift and then click and drag, and that will allow you to select multiple shapes at one time. Once multiple shapes are selected, you can actually drag them around. You could resize them. But for now, I'm just going to show you if you click, drag, multi-select, you're able to right-click on this and click Align, click on Middle, and that's going to allow all of those shapes to snap right into alignment. If I right-click and I click Distribute, that's going to produce even spacing between each of my blocks. Our diagramming tool also allows you to change the colors of these blocks. You can also change whether the text within it is bold, italicized, underlined, and various other ways of calling out specific blocks in your model. If you want to export your model, you can come over here to the top left to our export button, where we have export to image, which will download the image as a PNG, or you can copy it to your clipboard, which will allow you to paste it directly into a PowerPoint or any other sort of document. With that, I'm going to go back to the main version of EngineRoom. The third type of tool that is available in EngineRoom is our statistical analysis. And this is very broad, ranging from basic graphs like your histograms, Pareto charts, all the way up through a very advanced statistics like design of experiments and regression. So just to give an example, I'm going to start off with a Pareto chart. So I'm going to come down here to Pareto analysis. I'm going to click on it. And this is going to show a tool with some examples for what your data should look like. For a Pareto analysis, for example, you've got two different types of formats you can use. One is a categorical variable only, where the values are repeated over and over. Over here on the right, you can do a more summarized version. So you can have a categories variable as well as the frequencies available here. So let's go get some data to analyze using this chart. I'm going to come here to upload. So I uploaded my data as basic graphs. If I click on it and then click edit, and now I can see all of the data that was available in that data source. You can see here that I've got a categories variable as well as a frequencies variable. And then I also have categories unstacked. I'm going to save and close this. The next interaction is very important for using EngineRoom. We're going to click continue. And it's going to first explain what type of data is needed for your drop zone. In this case, we need numeric, text, or date time data. If I come over here to basic graphs, I'm going to click on the data source to expose my variables. Then I'm going to click on the variable I want to look at, in this case, categories, and drag it over to the drop zone. Then it's going to advance the slide and explain a little bit more about the type of data we need next. These are both optional, but since I chose the categories, which I was using for our summarized version of data, I'm going to come over here to frequencies, click on that variable, and drag it over to the drop zone. Once I've selected my data, I'm going to click continue. The next screen is going to show various options that are available for that tool. So in this case, we've got the ability to make our Pareto chart horizontal instead of vertical. We have the ability to show labels above the data. We're able to show a cumulative frequency line, etc. I'm just going to leave these at the default and then click continue. And then we get to our output. Statistical analysis tools all have a very similar output. On the left side is our table data. Anything that is in text or numeric information is going to appear over here on the left. On the right side is going to be our graphical data. In this case, we have a Pareto chart where we've got the data organized into bars, ordered from highest to lowest. The graphics can all be edited right here in EngineRoom. I can come over here to add annotations and click on that button. And then I'm also able to click on a point, and then I'm able to add information. I'm also able to click and change the color of the bars, for example, or any other edits I'm making to this chart. Titles can be changed. As well as labels and mins and maxes of your chart. So let's say I want to make this 20 instead. You can see how that's going to change my chart. If you wanted to go back and change any of the options, you can come here to Study Setup, and this is going to show those options again, allowing you to make changes right here in the study. The fourth type of tool we have here in EngineRoom is process modeling. Our main modeling tool is Process Playground, which is a discrete event simulation tool. If you come up here to model, you'll see Process Playground, and we'll click on that. And that's going to open up in a new window. This is going to be a setup screen. In this case, I'll leave it blank, and I'm just going to call this Process Playground. I'm going to click Create. This looks very similar to our diagramming tools, but it has some key interesting features that allow you to check for bottlenecks and how your process is going to respond to variability. So let's build out a simple process. The first block we're going to use is a demand block. This is going to generate the items, people, or any other information that is going to be flowing through your model. Next, I'll introduce a queue block. This is a queue where it's going to hold various items until it is able to move on to the next step. Next is an activity block. This is what actually does the processing and adds time in your model. And last, I'll introduce an exit block. This is just going to represent the end of your process. Once I've laid out my model, I can now see how items are going to flow through my process. If I come over here and click on Run Settings, click Run Model, I can see the various items that are going to be flowing through my process. Right now, we have very little variation. Actually, we have no variation in this process. So you'll see that over time, this one item always appears above this activity block. After you add your blocks, the next thing to look at is your distributions. So if I double click on this demand block, you can see that there are some parameters that can be set for this block. In this case, I'm going to set a demand time distribution that includes a little bit of variation. For demand block, we can use exponential or Erlang. We're going to select exponential. And you'll notice here that we have a mean of 1 minute, which means that on average, the time between arrivals for each of our items is going to be 1 minute. However, several will be coming faster than 1 minute, and you'll have a few that'll come slower than 1 minute. I'm going to close this. The second place you'd like to add variation is in your activity blocks. So if I double click on this activity block, you'll see that I have a processing time distribution right now, which is a constant of 1 minute. And if I wanted to add some variation to that, I generally use a triangular distribution for an activity block. I'm going to set the minimum to 0.5 with a mode of 1 and a maximum of 2 minutes. So now I will have some of our items that are coming closer to 0.5, some as a mode, they will come at 1, and they're going to be processed at a maximum of 2 minutes. All right, let's rerun this model. So you'll notice here that we're going to have things that we hadn't seen before, which is blank time, where the activity is not having any items appear above it. You have this queue that can be building up over here on the left side, and the exit is not going up as consistently as it was before. Let's skip to the end. After we get to the end of our process, we can actually take a look at some statistics that occur afterwards. So for example, if I double click on this queue block and I go over to results, I can look at the total number of items that went through, the average length of this queue over the course of the simulation, the max number of items that were in that queue, the BCT, which stands for the block cycle time. This refers to the amount of time the items are spending in this block on average. The number that are currently in there, the minimum number, and then also the TLT, which stands for the total lead time. This is the amount of time until the items reach that block. The queue block is also really interesting because if I click on this show graph, we can see how the queue length changed over the course of the simulation. See, it got all the way up to those 9 items in the queue, and then it made its way back down so that at the end of the simulation, we had 0. If I come to the activity block, I'm going to look at things like setup time, idle time, run time, and blocked time. This will tell me the percentage of time that my activity was running, how long it was actually working on particular items. And idle time is the amount of time it was spent with no items available to work on. Blocked time refers to any time items spent in this block unable to move on in the model. This usually indicates you might need a queue block or there was some other bottleneck causing that issue. And setup time is additional time per group or per item that is added at the beginning of their processing time. Finally, we'll take a look at the exit block. The total lead time refers to the time it took before an item reached this particular block. In this case, you can see that items took about 6 minutes to get to the exit. The last concept that is really helpful for Process Playground is items. So if I come over here to the left, I can see my different item types. In this case, the default is item 1, but I can add several new items to give me unique patterns or combined items or splitting items apart over the course of my simulation. This is a great way of adding interactions between different item types to your model. So I've just added my item 2. I'm going to come to my demand block, come back to parameters, and then I'm going to click on item 2. So now you can see here that I have a second item. I'm going to add an exponential with a mean of 2 minutes between arrivals. So we're going to have fewer item 2s over the course of our model. Then I'm going to click play and run model. And now you'll see that there are 2 different colors of items that are moving through our model. So I can check on specifically item 1 or specifically item 2. and see how they are interacting in this model. There's a lot more complexity that can go into Process Playground. For example, there's many more different types of blocks, but just as an overview, that is a very simple process that you can make here in Process Playground. That concludes our demo of EngineRoom. Thank you.